I quit my job on December 31st, 2021. I was actually working in a job that I loved. It was definitely very comfy, cozy. It was something that I could have kept for years. Just based on the way it was set up, I worked from home. It was very flexible. It wasn't very time bound, even though, yeah, it was technically 9 to 5, but like, I was able to make lunch in the middle of the day and like go for walks and different things. And it was more so about getting my work done. So it wasn't like, this time around that I quit my job because it was toxic or anything like that. It was actually a wonderful place of employment, but I quit because God told me to. And looking back, I believe He told me to because, like I said, that job was pretty comfy, cozy, and, I think He knew that I needed to go ahead and jump and, go to that point of no return sooner than later so that I could jumpstart the rest of my life. I remember one of our executives saying to me either it was during my exit interview or something like that. They were like, so you can't do the things that you are going forth to do while still keeping your job? And I said, no, I can't. Back then, I did not know all of the reasons why not, but like it makes so much sense in hindsight. But yeah, so I quit in December 2021, and actually, I was moving to a new state, a new city, like all the way across the country. So I also felt like, this is a perfect time to just have a brand new start. And that is exactly, what it was. I moved from Maryland. I am from Maryland, the good DMV or whatever. And I moved to Las Vegas, Nevada. Now, why Las Vegas? For a couple reasons. I had visited my friend there like maybe 2 years prior or something like that. And before that, I hadn't had any place that like said to me, ooh, I could see myself living here. But when I went there, she was in the military, so she lived in the suburbs, and I actually just got to see what real life would be like there. Like I didn't have my first Vegas experience by being on the strip and doing like the touristy version. I did more so she lived there, I was visiting a friend version, and I loved it. Like waking up to the mountain views every day. It was sunny every day. Love the dry heat. Love the fact that it was hot. Like it was just beautiful. Okay. And so I was like, wow, I can see myself living here. So there was that. And then also I had just gotten when I went to my friend's house, I was in the process, like just started the master's program. And then when I was moving there, I had just graduated from the master's program, getting my master's in medical cannabis science and therapeutics. And so, even though medical cannabis was legal in Maryland, it wasn't hot in Maryland. And there weren't mountain views in Maryland. And it was not sunny every day in Maryland. And yeah, so it would have just been a completely new start, a completely new place. And I felt like I literally said when I moved there, like, this is effortless self-care. Like literally the fact that it was sunny every day, I literally said to myself, sunny every day and mountain views. I was like, this is effortless self-care. Like you can just step outside and boom, your day is better. And so, yeah, I quit my job. I moved to Vegas. I technically moved to Vegas before my employment ended, but I moved there. I got a part-time job working at a dispensary, which was very cool. I really enjoyed being able to put, the things I had learned in school to action, like actually looking at labels, actually learning about compliance and different things, all the nerdy stuff. I actually worked in the back as an inventory specialist or something like that. I don't remember. So I really got to work with the products. I got to see people's orders come in. I got to see just how the actual business ran behind the scenes, which was very cool. And so I did that for a few months and I had, a good time. The first few months I was in Vegas, I moved out there by myself. Let me also say that I didn't have any family out there. I didn't have any friends out there. It was just me. However, Vegas was pretty popular that year. I feel like I had a family member or a friend visit every month up until probably February, and maybe even a little bit after that. So it's not like I had much time to, I definitely had time to myself, but it's not like I really got lonely or anything like that because, Thanksgiving came around. My friend came to visit and we went to a concert together, which was super fun. We had Thanksgiving together. I cooked Thanksgiving dinner maybe for the second time. Did I cook it for quarantine? I don't remember, but I did make it for both of us, and that was my first like vegan type Thanksgiving dinner, and it was wonderful. We had a good time, explored, and so that happened. And then maybe it ended in December. My mom had come for Christmas. My aunt was in town for Christmas. We went to go see Usher, which was very cool. Like, I ended up going with her because unfortunately her sister got sick, and so I ended up going by accident, and what a treat that was. So yeah, I got to spend Christmas, New Year's around that time, like the holidays, with my mom and my aunt. And then January came around, and this is where things get intense. So when I first moved to Vegas, things were pretty much still normal. I mean, it was a new city, but I was still working my other job. Obviously the time difference was a little bit different, but again, it wasn't very strict on time, so it wasn't that bad. But then January came around, and something had happened in my dispensary job that was pretty traumatic. I was in the back, and there were two guys that just started two employees that started like a full out brawl back there, and I was back there by myself. And if you know me, you know that I do not like violence, like, at all. No, thank you. I will pass. And I felt like that was just my sign, like, okay, this ain't it. I mean, there have been other things that were happening there that I felt like, I don't know. Like, I was already continuing my spiritual journey, but it was getting more intense, like moving out to the desert and, moving into just a whole new season was very much so a spiritual shift. I don't know what other word I can use for that, but yeah, we'll just say that. So I really felt like, okay, maybe, I'm not meant to be working here either. And I was getting ready to, accept a full-time position over there. I started off part-time because I had my full-time job, but, because my other one was ending, they were like, hey, if you want to get full-time hours, then you can. Well, things went left, and I ended up leaving at the beginning of the year, and it really was that cutoff, like, point of no return, which was meant to happen when I quit my original job. And so that happened, and the journey really began. So, like, what part do I want to talk about first? I want to talk about, like, the everyday part. Yeah, let's just talk about everyday. So this was the first time maybe ever that I had like just this much floating freedom. And I won't say ever, because when I was a teacher, technically my summers were off, but I, would work here and there. So maybe you can count that. But like, this is the first time it was just like literally a free flow, like your schedule's open, like, and during those first few months, I just spent so much time with God, like so much time reading the Bible for myself, so much time walking. Like, I feel like I walked miles and miles and miles every day. Like, and it wasn't like I was trying to. It was like I think it was really healing for me. Ultimately, it was a way to explore. It was a way to be out and, feel the weather against my skin. Even when it was chilly, the desert does get cold too. It's just a different type of cold. And so yeah, I would be, listening to the Bible, listening to sermons, listening to books, podcasts, whatever. I won't say whatever. I was very selective about what I was listening to, but still like things to like fill me up and fuel me. I had a lot more quiet time than I had in a few years. Like, granted, I had been in therapy previously, so I feel like a lot of the therapy prompted my ability and my understanding of how to work through certain things. And now it was more so putting those things into practice in alignment with walking out by faith and really deepening my relationship with God. And so I walked all over Henderson, Nevada, which is a suburb of Las Vegas. And it was beautiful. I lived near Trader Joe's, so I would go walk and get my groceries. I thought that was super cute. I lived near the other grocery store, Smith's, which is like Kroger, if that's, if you live in the South. And I would go grocery shopping there. I lived near, like, the neighborhood I lived in was perfect. I lived in walking distance to the library, and a bunch of other stuff. The post office, like UPS, like wherever, you name it, I could walk there. Even Target. Target was about 3 miles away, but I would even find myself walking there sometimes too. And yeah, that was just like literally, it felt like walking with God for real. Like, you walk with God throughout your life theoretically, but like in that season, it was literally like walking with God for real. And yeah, like I didn't really realize how healing that was until looking back on it. There was a lot of things that we addressed, and by we, I mean me and God addressed in that time, that either had only been scratched on the surface during therapy or that had not even been uncovered at all. Because I am a firm believer that, you know, God will reveal certain things in certain seasons as you are ready to deal with them, as He knows that you have the capacity to face them. And so there were certain things that I had either buried or just thrown by the wayside, or even not even realized that had an impact on me that needed to be addressed. One of my favorite things about that season, which honestly in the very beginning it was a lot of tension within, and when I say the beginning, I mean almost that whole first year. Like, maybe not the whole first year, but definitely at least the first 6 months, maybe even the whole year, was this tension of feeling like, okay, what do I need to do? I moved out here. I have to prove that I'm a success. Like, I quit my job, so we got to get in here. We got to do something. Like, you know, what are we going to do in order to, you know, prove, you know, and accomplish? And, you know, I had been in that accomplishment cycle forever. Like, I can't remember a time where I wasn't accomplishing something worth, you know, shouting from the rooftops, you know, and, you know, even from grade school, always on the honor roll, maybe, you know, principal's honor roll, graduating, going to the #1 HBCU or whatever. I won't even say what that is right here. Graduating, getting a, you know, some of these things I didn't even realize were such a big accomplishment, but, you know, getting a salaried job, like the first few months out of college, like I literally had a job the first school year after I graduated. Like, I got my job in July, I think, and I was ready to start school in August. Like, that's such a big blessing that I didn't even realize, you know, that was just, for me, it was such a standard that I didn't realize even how much of a, like, blessing and accomplishment that really was at the time. But, you know, even like, you know, moving back to Maryland on my own, though I had family there, and, you know, eventually getting my own apartment with a roommate, and then my own condo by myself, and, you know, just different things I had been steadily like accomplishing. And, you know, I'm very grateful for all of that, because in that, you know, I was able to prove to myself that it was possible, that I could do it, and that, you know, in many ways, well, I won't even say that was possible. I felt like in that time I was able to show those that are younger than me, like my siblings, my cousins, you know, that this is possible, you know, set a different standard for, you know, I won't say a different standard, but just set a standard for like life, etc. But during that time, it wasn't until maybe like 2018 where I came around to this understanding that, like, hey, there's some things beneath the surface that need to be addressed. And that's when I went to therapy. So fast forward, what I was saying was I had been steadily accomplishing. Oh yeah, I went to grad school, graduated on time, went to grad school while working full-time in a graduate program full-time, and graduated first class of the program that I was in, like first ever in the country, I believe, for that type of program. You know, so it had been accomplishment after accomplishment, and I'm very grateful for that. And also, you know, sometimes, and maybe I should just speak for myself, going and seeking after accomplishments, I won't pretend like these weren't things that I wanted. But, you know, in this new season, God was calling me to recalibrate how I saw success. And during that in-between time, there was a pause on the external accomplishments so that we could work on some things internally. And that was very challenging, because at the time and at the moment, I didn't have that understanding that that's what we were doing. I knew I was changing my life. I knew I was going after something different, but I still was in that mode of, okay, we need to accomplish something. Like, you know, when I go back home and visit, I have to have something to share and like tell everybody that like I went out to Vegas and I made it and I blew up and I did the dang on thing and whatever else, you know, and that wasn't what God was calling me to do in that season. And I just had like a lot of tension around that. Like, I wouldn't say that any one person or anybody was putting pressure on me externally, but I felt pressured to have something to show for the choices I had made. I felt pressured to be an overnight success and make something happen. I felt pressured to start my business and it blow up swiftly. I felt pressured to, you know, have something to share when I did go back home for Thanksgiving or whatever the next time was. And, I am the oldest sibling, so I felt that pressure too. I'm like, you can't, like, you've been on the up and up. You can't afford not to continue on the up and up. But I didn't realize that God was trying to upgrade my life in a different way. But I'm grateful that I decided still to stick with the process, because I feel like what I gleaned in that season, I came out with even more than a checkbox accomplishment would have given me. And so during that time, there were various aspects of my life that God began to just put his finger on and, walk me through improving. One of them being releasing a 10-year attachment to THC, to smoking. That's so weird to say on camera, like, because I'm not even that person anymore. But to smoking weed, it had become a part of my life. It had become a part of even what I presented as my identity. And what I realized later is it came into my life at a time when I accepted the status quo as the norm and accepted the fact that that had to be my life. And since I had quit my job and decided I no longer wanted the status quo, it released my need to even continue in that habit. It no longer fit. It was no longer necessary. I feel like for me, I've known this truth for a little while, but I didn't want to share it because I felt like, well, that's not the case for everybody. But this isn't about everybody. This is about my journey here. And so, like, for me, looking back, I realized that I smoked for so long because there was a part of me that was just not satisfied with the life that I was living. Grateful, yes. Accomplishing, yes. Improving, yes. Doing the things that I felt were right, yes. But I feel like there was much of me that was suppressed. There were definitely years at which I had, muted my own voice in my life in small and bigger ways. I had traded in my ability and desire to dream, to reach for bigger. I don't even say bigger things. Some of the things aren't even about big, but it was just allowing myself to believe that this status quo life didn't have to be the norm, and so stepping outside of that and allowing myself to chart a new path, essentially, it caused my body to essentially reject, THC. It's like, hey, it doesn't fit here anymore. That whole smoking in order to be okay with being where you are, to be okay with, hey, this is just how adult life is, to be okay with, okay, this is how people expect you to show up, that type of thing. Now that I was no longer doing that, that was a chain that quickly broke off. Like, when I say, I think it was February or March of that year, probably February. I think it was February of that year that, yeah, like, literally there came a day where I went to smoke as I usually did, and I had a panic attack. Like, literally my body had an adverse reaction to it, and it wasn't anything new. Like, it was literally the same thing I had already had in my house, the same thing, whatever, and my body rejected it. And I could not understand why. I had already been asking God even before quitting my job, like, hey, God, if this isn't something that you want in my life, please show me, and if it's okay with you, show me how to use it, more medicinally and for health purposes, because there are many health benefits to the cannabis plant overall, both THC and the other cannabinoids. And so, I was asking God, like, hey, show me how to, use this in my life in a healthy way. And if there comes a point where you don't want me to use it at all, I was at the point where I was ready to let it go. And I guess that's probably, even in telling the story, that's probably what opened the door for him even being able to say, hey, quit your job, but anyway. So that happened, and I called it a hiatus because, like, in my mind, I still hadn't had, like, this massive, like, open up the sky, this is terrible, don't ever do it again, and I still don't necessarily feel that way anymore. Let me say it this way. I still don't necessarily feel like, it was ever a thing where God, like, cracked the whip and said, don't ever do that again. what he showed me is like, hey, like, this isn't for the highest and best version of you. And going forward, this does not fit in your life. Now that you are walking into your, the truth of who I've created you to be, and you're walking in authenticity, you don't need this thing anymore to mute that part of you that you suppressed for so long. And so, there's no part of me that ever wants to go back. There's no part of me that is even interested or has a taste for it or anything like that. I still believe in the healing properties of the plant overall. I still would, use CBD, which is not psychoactive, for pain or other, medicinal things when it comes to THC and smoking and, the lifestyle that I lived for a good amount of time. It's like that doesn't fit anymore because, when you're, in this free, being able to be free, to be me, be authentic, to pursue dreams, pursue purpose, to show up in my fullness and no longer muting part of myself, it's not needed and it doesn't fit. And yeah, so there's that part. That was definitely a very big change. So with that change came, an even bigger focus on my health in various areas. I learned what it looked like. I had already been walking in some of these things, but I learned even more what it looked like to listen to my body and to respond, when I was tired, and to give my body what I needed, and to, see what it looked like to rest, to come out of hustling, to, really just be more intentional with how I cared for myself. I had already started walking in self-love in many other ways, like I said, going to therapy, like, being mindful of the type of things I was taking in. But like, I feel like in that time when I was by myself in Vegas, that part of my journey intensified more. There was so much more of a flow. One thing I loved about being there is our pool was 24 hours and was open all year round. So I found myself going to sit by the pool early in the morning, sometimes, even at night, different things like that. Like I said, going for walks, taking naps in the middle. Did I take a lot of naps? No, because I love the sunshine. But, resting in the middle of the day and working from a place of flow, and I didn't have words to give to any of this. I was literally just doing what I felt led to do by the spirit and what I felt like my body needed in the moment. And looking back, God was walking me through what it looks like to finally get to the end of my healing that had begun years before that. And so that happened. I definitely explored a lot. I felt like, I walked into what it looked like to be a kid again in many ways. Like I would go down to the Strip and walk around the hotels because they have beautiful hotels down there. Like, being from the DMV, I used to love going to the Smithsonian's and to the museums down there. And so like being in Vegas, I would replicate that by going down to the Strip and walking around the museums and just looking at the beautiful architecture and artwork that they had down there. Like I wasn't even there for like the craziness. It would just be the experience, like the lights, like the architecture, like, there's this hotel there that has a beautiful botanical garden that they change out every quarter with different, decoration, and it's all real live plants and flowers, which was very cool. And just like literally exploring and giving myself the freedom to just be. I feel like God gave me that free time to just be. And I really appreciate that time. What I did not know was God was giving me rest from years of striving and hustling and accomplishing and, running after things. And he was just giving me a chance to recalibrate what success looked like, recalibrate what life looked like, and, to really heal my heart and heal my body in ways I did not know, to bring me back to equilibrium, to bring me back to my true identity. So that happened. What was I doing for money? So I had savings for a good amount of that time. I had my last couple of paychecks from my job, and then, I had from my full-time job, and then my last couple of paychecks from my part-time job. And then I had savings, and then I started doing Instacart a bit, just to make money. And honestly, like God really provided through that. I didn't really have to hustle or anything, but like when I say I was able to pay my rent and different things like that, and I did not even work every day, all day either. So, that was a blessing that gas got mad expensive while I was out there. I will say that. Like, I remember at one point, my God, it was like California prices, like $6 per tank of gas or something crazy. And I was like, all right, Lord, like, but anyway, so what happened? I got to work. I was on a app called TaskRabbit. I had been on there for some years. I used to do that part-time when I was a teacher. And so I got back on it when I was in Vegas, and I met some very cool clients doing personal assisting, and a little bit of home organization. Actually, I did do home organization while I was there. And that was the first time that I had ever come into this realization that you could be paid and paid well for organizing people's houses. Like, it was something that I just already did just for fun, you know, in my own free time, but seeing like, oh wow, you can, like, you know, make money for real off of this. That was a great experience. I feel like I got to see and connect with different people. I got to work with some very cool clients on a consistent basis. I worked with one person who was a screenwriter, and she was just, you know, a beautiful, sweet person. I got to, you know, really serve well. And I think in that season, it was a blessing to be able to serve other women in a time when I was healing my own heart, and healing my own life. Why do I feel like crying? Like, I don't know. It was just, I feel like that was a blessing from God for him to allow me to, like, pour out in that way. Because I feel like that was also very, like, healing and fulfilling for me, especially in some of the seasons that those other women were in, you know, during the time I was serving them. Not that they were in, you know, hard times, but more so, like, you know, pouring into their businesses and into their home lives and different things like that, and being able to see, you know, how different people lived. God used that to expose me to just different possibilities, again, in a time when I was coming out of the mindset of the status quo and this is how things had to be. And so he really immersed me into, you know, opportunities to see, you know, what entrepreneurship could look like. I don't think he was giving me a blueprint of like, hey, this is where you're going, and, you know, copy paste. He was more so just opening up the world of opportunities and possibilities to me. And, you know, there was one woman that I worked with that I feel like was definitely, I feel like all of my connections have been God ordained, but this person, you know, when I think back, I feel like in this season I've really been reflecting on my time working with her more than ever, because I feel like at a time when I just was not in a place to accomplish anything else. I was tired, and I just wanted to be able to be myself, and I didn't want anybody trying to put any expectations on me or anything like that. And thankfully I didn't have to. He still gave me exposure to what it could look like to have massive success without hustle, to have massive success, and impact the lives of women, and still have a life that flows, still care for your health and well-being, still have, and I won't even say still, like, I had never been introduced to the fact that you can do effective work in a few hours a day and it be massively impactful. So that even, you know, I feel like God introduced me to that. And, you know, she was very intentional in bringing me into spaces to really expose me to things that I would not have seen otherwise. And I think, I don't know whether she was being strategic in this or if it was just God, but even just saying certain things that really spoke life to me, that still speak life to me today, you know, being able to travel with her to speaking engagements and to, you know, just really be a part of the background behind the scenes things, that led up to those events, you know, helping her to prepare for her own conferences and retreats and different things like that, working in her office. It was just very beautiful. And also seeing what it looked like to be successful and walk in the fullness of your authenticity, like the fullness of it, from the made up version, you know, I'm on stage, you know, I'm picture perfect, all the way down to the I just woke up, but I have this message to you, and I'm not taking my scarf off, and I'm not getting out the bed, but here's a message for you. Or, you know, whatever it looked like, you know, to see that level of freedom in a time where God was bringing me, you know, was bringing me out of, I would say bringing me into freedom. It was definitely a blessing. So anyway, fast forward, and you know, to be paid well to do the things that I was able to do, to be able to try new things too. She definitely challenged me to do things that I hadn't done before, like managing her whole home remodel process. Like I ain't never done that before, but you know, she trusted me to get it done, and we did, and it was beautiful. And yes, um, and then I decided, okay, I wanted to leave Vegas. I was ready for community after a certain point. You know, I feel like I had gone through as much of the healing journey as I could go through by myself. And that, like, I still feel like that was such a sacred time for myself, such a sacred time for between me and God. And it's something that I will literally never forget. And also, there came a time where I was just, you know, ready for community. Like I had uncovered a lot, and I'm still not even telling all of it because some of that stuff is just, it's not to be shared right now per se. But I feel like in that time, a lot of healing took place, a lot of shifting took place, and there was no part of me that wanted to go back to anything that I had left behind. But I was ready to move forward in community. So I decided to move to Texas, where I am now. My mom lived here, and I knew, you know, the rest of my family, my immediate family lives in the DMV, Virginia and Maryland, and I was like, we ain't going back to the cold. And I'm still like that right now. Like, people always ask me, like, are you staying in Texas? I'm like, I love it for now. Ooh, excuse me. I love it for now. I don't see myself moving anytime soon. But guess what? If I ever move again, it won't be anywhere cold, you know. So anyway, I was like, okay, I'll move to Texas. You know, my mom lived here. My mom and I hadn't lived in the same city since before I left for college, which is crazy. And so I was like, yeah, we're gonna give it a try. And see what happens. So I came to Texas, and I thought we were just, okay, it's finally time to jump in and do business for real. But when I came here, you know, there was a different level of, I won't say healing. Like, I feel like, well, still healing. I feel like there was a part of my healing that was, you know, digging up and then filling voids. And then now this was healing and building up that needed to happen. Like the building up of, okay, who are you in this next season? So when I came here, wow. First of all, before I came, like in the weeks leading up to me coming, I had a radical encounter with Jesus, like different than anything. Like we had already been having relationships. I had already been walking with him. I had already been reading the word, been in church, all the things. But this was different. Like this was I don't know. It was different. And I think it was just, maybe it was that moment of, you know, I don't know. I don't know how to explain it, but it was just a giving over of my life in a different way. Granted, I had always loved God and loved Jesus, but there was a moment that happened in Vegas on my living room floor that just changed everything. I just woke up different. Like after all of that, even after all the healing, I woke up different. Like I was like, and maybe it was that moment of you shall know the truth and the truth shall set you free, because I feel like when I woke up, there were just so many things that I just was no longer interested in. There were so many things that I was just like, okay, that's not attached to my identity anymore. And I didn't really know what to do with it either. So I feel like, you know, when I came to Texas, it was more so about, okay, now how do you walk in this new, you know, this new person, this new identity, this new version of you. You know, I feel like there was a part of me in leading up to sharing the story that felt like, okay, the past me wasn't me. I think there were aspects of that weren't me, because so much of my authenticity had been muted on my behalf and suppressed. But also I recognize that an evolution had happened as well. Like there's a version of you that you know when you're not healed, and when you're living in the remnants of trauma, when you're living in, you know, scarcity mindset, when you're living in the status quo. And then there's a version of you, the healed version of you, and you have to get to know that person differently. You know, that part of you has always been true, because that's the part of you that God has always known. You know, it's the part of you that God cultivated and created long ago. However, if you've been living so long in the other version, you know, you have to get to know this new version of you again. So I feel like when I first came to Texas, yeah, that is what was happening. I still didn't have um a full understanding of what God wanted me to do. And I realized looking back now that that season wasn't about doing. It was about being and becoming and learning myself so that I wouldn't go into any of the next seasons from a people pleasing perspective, from a, shape shifting perspective or anything like that. It was about getting firmly rooted. And so, like, when I first came back, I literally read the Bible in, I think, 6 months or something shorter. Like, it was something crazy, like 4 months or something like that. Like, I was diligent about, like, literally, I would read, I think I try to read I don't know. I'm not even gonna tell you the numbers because it's not even about that. But I was like, I need to know the word for myself. I, felt like I needed to be equipped with that. I wasn't listening to a bunch of podcasts and reading any books and anything like that. Like, I was serious about knowing God's word for myself, and not from a legalistic perspective where I'm like, okay, he said don't eat this, so I'm not gonna eat that. Nothing like that. Like, I was like, I had encounter Jesus' spirit in such a way where I wanted to know so much more about him. And that was, spending time with him and then reading the word was a really big way to do that. And I also felt like whatever he was calling me to next required for me to be anchored and not to be swayed by, both the world or religion or anything like that. It had to be anchored in knowing God's truth for myself. And so I dug in deep. Like, I, again, still spend hours with God, like hours in the prayer closet, like praying, writing my journal, reading the word, worshiping, just on my face, crying, whatever. During that time, money wise, I was doing home organization and personal assisting again. Once again, a beautiful opportunity to serve others. Like, there were times I got to pray with people. There were times I got to pray for people. There were times I just got to be there and, listen to scriptures as I was doing my work. It was just a beautiful flow, in that time. And then let me see, got my real estate license. So before that, I had actually gotten a consistent client that I was working with, and God used her to speak over me and into me quite a few things. And then he released me from that space. He said, okay, it's time to go. And that was a very quick, season, but it was a blessing. And a lot of the wisdom and even prophetic things she spoke over me have been very helpful. And then I got my real estate license. And since then, still a faith walk. That really birthed me into a different, I don't want to say type, a different way of walking out my faith. It caused me to have to apply my faith to money in a different way. So when I was in Vegas and a little bit between that, it was more so like trusting in God to provide. And now he was like stretching my faith to believe God for prosperity. And that's still something I'm believing God for overall. But, when I first started, after I got my license and I first started, I was committed to, okay, this is the plan. We're going to do these things. We're not getting out here and hustling. And God was very adamant about that. And I was very adamant about that for myself, that hustling days were over. Like, we ain't striving, we ain't hustling, because the blessing of the Lord maketh rich and he adds no sorrow. And I had, realized that toiling was under the curse, and I was not under the curse. Okay. So, I was really adamant about not striving, not stressing, not doing the most. And so, me and God made a plan, we executed, and yeah, the favor that God showed me in sending me clients to work with, and even when he would send those clients, there's certain people that he would give them words to give me. And I'm not talking about being like hungry for prophetic words, but I'm talking about literally like we would just be talking and they would say something that resonated from prayer time and different things like that, which was crazy, and it was a blessing. And so, yeah, I've had quite a few accomplishments in real estate so far, and I've learned so much. Like, there are actually things that I want to share that, even being in real estate, God used that to teach me. But I knew, even going into real estate, like this, I didn't feel like real estate was my calling, but I felt like it was something I was called to do for a time. And it's not something that I'm quitting either. Like, I feel like I'll have my license forever. But the reason why I didn't, like, you know, blast it everywhere and like build a whole whatever around this, because I felt like it was um an experience for me, for growth, learning, and service, and also, the beginning of prosperity. But I felt like there was still something that God was preparing me for. And, during that whole time, I was on here, sharing different words and different things like that. I was sharing what I was learning in the prayer closet with you guys here on this channel. And, God really started unwrapping my prophetic gift with me. And I'm not a prophet or anything like that, but when you sit in the counsel of God, anybody can, sit with God, get to know God enough to hear the voice of God, and, be able to share what's on God's heart or mind during a different time. And so, like, God really highlighted that to me in a different way. Like, I feel like even before, God had, done that previously, but it was in a different way. And so, God started unwrapping that in a different way. Now that I knew more of his word, he was able to pull on that and show me what that looked like. And so, fast forward to this year. So all of that was like 2022 in Vegas, 2023, in Texas. And then this year, I don't like to hinge everything on, accomplishments, but like God did do a thing, and I was able to make Rookie of the Year my first year in real estate just based off of my sales within 2 months. And that was a blessing, just because he really showed me that it doesn't take hustling and striving and doing the most, because I did not hustle, strive, or do the most. I worked diligently. I was focused. I was obedient in putting my systems and processes in place when he told me to. I was obedient in learning what the contracts looks like when he told me to, even when I had not a client in sight. And then God put his blessing on it. At the beginning of this year, 2024, going into my 30th year, God called me into a quiet time. And he he led me to take a pause on real estate for a couple months. Was it a couple months or was it just 1 month? I don't know. I think it was like a month and a half. No, I think it was longer than that. I think it was like 2 or 3 months. I don't remember, but leading up to my birthday, I took a super hard rest for a month, and then a different type of rest for a couple months after that. And I was just really preparing me for what this third decade would look like. And really bringing things back to me that I had laid down for a time, while I went through this healing and development journey. And just really speaking to me about my identity now that I had healed enough, and also learned about him and deepened our relationship enough to understand some of the words he was speaking to me. And yeah, like he began to speak to me about parts of my identity that I didn't know before, or maybe like I had never given voice to before, like writing. Like, yes, I have been writing in my journals for a long time. Yes, I have been writing a blog for a good amount of time. And yes, even back in like middle school, I used to write little books for my classmates to read and whatnot. But he was speaking to me about like actually writing. He was speaking to me about becoming a wife one day soon. It still hasn't happened yet, but one day soon. He was speaking to me like just basically bringing together these aspects of my identity that he had been showing me in glimpses, and some of them that he had not shown me yet, and just showing me that all of this is what I had placed in you. Not one thing, not just, not just this or this, not one or the other, but both. And so he was just revealing to me those different things. He was reinforcing, certain character traits and different things like that for me, and preparing me to give me my life back. And by that, I mean, I had been in a season where it was literally like, moment by moment being led, and God was putting me back in a place where it's like, hey, I've cleared out all the junk, and we have deepened our relationship, and now I want you to be able to go forth confidently, knowing that I'm on your side, knowing that I live within you, and being able to trust the things that I show you, and different things like that. So, we did that for a few months, and then I went to Greece. I knew that, well, let me say, before that, I turned 30. It was beautiful. I really enjoyed that. Like, it was such a blessing. I went home to Maryland for my birthday. And yeah, I can't remember. Why did I even go home? Did I just go home just because? I feel like I went home for a reason. But, oh, duh. I went home for my, okay, I know why I went home. Anyway, so I went to Greece in May, and that was like my little birthday trip to myself, but it was also for me, how do I say? I was ready to step into the fullness of this new season. A season that had been initiated 2.5 years before, but was now I knew would be going full throttle. And so I went to Greece because it was a woman in business retreat, and I knew that God was going to do something special there. I wasn't 100% sure what, especially given the space and place that we had been in. I had been in a place of rest and preparation and all of that, and so I just didn't know what it was going to be like to be at a woman in business retreat, because I didn't feel that. I still hadn't yet, even though God has began speaking to me about certain things, I still didn't feel that, like, okay, let's go type. So I didn't know it was going to be like, but I knew God was going to do something special, and he did. Like, literally, I'll talk about that in some other videos, so I'm not going to go too deep into that, but like, yeah, I feel like God just brought things full circle, and I felt the release into the next part of my life. And so here we are, fast forward, we are in September. I came out of that retreat after sharing with the ladies that, I want to write books. I want to be married. I want to be an active wife and mother. I had never said those things out loud to anyone before then, and it was so reaffirming to finally give voice to certain things that I had suppressed for a long time. The author thing, I don't feel like that was suppressed. That was just something that naturally came about. But some of the other desires that I had not voiced them, not really. Like, I don't know what that was about. Maybe there was a part of me that felt like it wasn't possible, or just didn't want to be disappointed by saying it out loud and it didn't happen. But giving voice to that initiated a whole new thing in my life, to now where I've written a whole guided journal that really captured a lot of the process that God has taken me through over the last couple of years, to reclaim my identity, to recover my identity, to reconstruct my identity, and packaging that in a way that guides other people through that process. Not where they can copy and paste my exact same process, but where they have the questions and the guidance and the scriptures and etc. for them to go through that walk with God. And one thing I realized since then is that the journal is not just for those who completely don't know who they are and need to start from scratch. This is also for those who, like me, had one version of yourself previously, and God is calling you to renew. He's calling you to uncover different parts of yourself and to go into a new season, a new part of your identity. And so it even gives space to walk through that type of process. This isn't something that has to be a one-time thing. It can be done over and over again based on God bringing you into a completely new part of your life that looks completely different than before. And so I'm just really excited about, what God is going to do in these next seasons. I feel like I needed to go ahead and share this, like, even if no one watches all the way to the end, I just needed to finally get all of this out. Like, it has been just something I've been sitting with, for years. And I know there's so many more gems that were picked up during that time, but before I go into the next season of all the beautiful things that God is going to do, I had to go back and reclaim the beautiful things he's already done. Like, literally restoring my life. Before I quit my job and everything, when I graduated from my master's program, I, said that my plans and my goals were to cultivate generational wealth. And I had some other goals on there as well, but one of the big things that God showed me during this time is that wealth is not just money. And so what God did during this time was gave me a wealthy life that then is primed for the money to be an additive on top of that. Wealthy life looks like living in health. A wealthy life looks like operating in flow and being able to do more than work. It's not about earning a living, your whole life being wrapped around earning a living. It is about building a life in which you are able to, use your gifts and then get a return on that investment, in living in a life that I won't say is balanced, but it has like a flow to it. Not hustling, but working diligently and in a focused way, working smarter, not harder. And it looks like having rich relationships, which, the friendships God has brought into my life and the ways that He has enriched the friendships I already had has been a blessing. It looks like being in tune with yourself and being healed and whole in more ways than one. It looks like eating well. And y'all know I like food. So, but not even just eating where it's tasty, but also being mindful of what the ingredients are. It looks like protecting your heart by guarding what you watch and what you listen to. It looks like, enjoying the richness of the outdoors and the natural things God has already created, sitting by the water, taking in the moments. It looks like, being able to walk with God in a way that's not bound by religion, but is really tied up in relationship, walking with God in such a way that honors Him, and it's not just on a set day or at a set moment, but it is becoming one with Him in such a way where you have this ready understanding and connectivity to the fact that He lives within you, and being able to readily access the Holy Spirit at any given moment, and to hear, the still small voice of the Lord at any moment. That is wealth, and then also, having a healed mindset about the actual money so that it can come in and so that you can do what you need to do with it. And so I feel like going into this next season, the season that we're already entering, I am very grateful for everything I had to go through to get here. It has not necessarily been an easy journey by any means, but I didn't want to tell this story in a way where I focused so heavily on the struggle of everything. I wanted to really focus on the triumphs, the truth, but the triumphs that came from it. And I feel like looking back, I did not have any or many checkbox accomplishments in the last couple of years, like things that I could put on a plaque and or put on a post and share. But I've had many accomplishments in the sense of, cultivating a life that I love every day, being able to sleep 8 hours a night, every night, like being diligent about that. Like, I don't care what time I go to bed, I need my 8 hours, with very few exceptions. I'll take an exception every now and then, but like for real, being able to eat well, being able to flow and have choice in my life, be able to make decisions for what's best for me and not feel like I'm constrained to A or B, and being able to have the freedom to do what God leads me to do in any given moment, and to also have the freedom to be able to share in the ways that feel authentic to me, and even growing in my authenticity. Like, I feel like before I could show up authentically here, God has given me an opportunity to show up increasingly more authentic and vulnerable in my actual relationships and in other spaces on a person-to-person basis, which makes this even possible. And so I am super grateful, and I pray that if anybody made it to the end, that this was a blessing to you. But even if not, like, this was just wonderful to be able to just document this, because I know I'll look back on it years from now and just be like, wow, look at how far we've come even from this moment, And so if, God has called you to quit your job, know that the journey will yield more fruit than you can even imagine right now. And that it may get a little rough in the middle because, there are many aspects to the journey that you're probably not anticipating right now. But you can know that God has your back like chiropractic, that He's with you throughout it, and that, He has a plan for you, plans to prosper you, not to harm you, to give you a future and a hope. And yeah, I'm gonna wrap it up here because I don't really have anything else to say. I'm really excited for this journal to come out because I know how much this journey has impacted me in such positive ways that I'm still yielding fruit from. Like, there's still parts of the journey that I'm just like, oh wow, that did happen and God did show me this, and then, gleaning more wisdom from it. And so I pray that it blesses those who decide to embark on that journey, and that you're able to get through the process even more swiftly than I did. Though, you know, the process of recovering your identity and even um, redefining yourself can take some time. I believe that, you know, it can still, with this guided process, walk you through it in a more tailored way. And so I'm so excited for that. I hope that you have a healthy and wholesome day wherever you are. I love you bunches. And, you know, let's go into this next season. I'm excited. Talk to you soon.